Hi everybody, it's Christina from Card Making Magic. Both of these cards have been on the blog just lately, and I've had lots of emails from people asking me to give some little tips on watercolouring. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, I like the look of watercolouring, but I can't draw. Well, neither can I, and you don't need to be able to draw to get this look. These are stamped images, and I'm going to show you how easy they are to achieve with some watercolour paints. So this is the stamp set that I'm using. I think this is a Bow Bunny set of stamps. I'm not quite sure. I've had it a really long time. But I'm going to use the little boy stamp. This one is a little girl holding some flowers. So to use this, you obviously need an acrylic block that's bigger than your stamp, and you're going to place your stamp on the block. Make sure it's well stuck down. Now, what I would suggest you do is that when you first get your stamps, I would stamp them out onto some plain card, and that can be stored with your stamps together in an envelope that keeps them all safe and so that you don't lose them. But for this now, we're going to stamp the image, but at the same time we're going to use a piece of masking paper, and we're going to stamp the image on this, so that what we will have is the image on our card and the image on our masking paper, and then we're going to cut around the masking paper. And if you keep these safe with your stamps, you'll be able to use them quite a few times before they sort of disintegrate. So all I've done is I've taken off a piece of masking tape, and I've just added it to my clothes just to take some of the sticky off it first, and then I'm going to just put it down on the edge of my card and make sure it's pressed down. Now, because you've taken the sticky off the masking tape, it should come off really easy and not tear your card as you're pulling it off. So what we need to do is just put a little horizon in for our image, and I'm not doing a straight line. I'm just taking a pen and I'm just going to either end. So there we've got our rabbit now stood on some ground, and he's ready to be done. So what I need to do first of all is apply the mask. So with your mask, you need to make sure, and because you've stamped the image on there, it's easier to line up. So you need to make sure that you've got this lined up with the image underneath. Just take your time and pop it in place and make sure it's pressed down. Okay, so we've got that pressed down onto the card, but don't throw this backing sheet away, because once you've finished, you can take this back off, put it onto your backing sheet and pop it in with your stamps for the next time that you want to use it. So before I actually start painting, I've got everything that I need. I've got 2 dishes of water. One is going to get dirty, and the other one will be used to really clean my brush before I go into another colour. I've got some kitchen roll. I've got just a cheap white tile with some felt feet on the bottom of it, and that's going to be my mixing palette. I've got my image taped down on my board, and these are the paints that I'm going to use, and these are from Japan. These are Japanese Gansai Tambi watercolours, and they are beautiful. Take the plastic lid out, and there are all the colours that you could possibly wish for. There's 36 in this box. We've got all these different shades at the top, but down here at the bottom we've got a white, a pearl, a gold, and like an antique gold, and all these pans come out, and the number is on the back, and it corresponds to the number in the box, so you can make sure that you pop them back in the right order. These paints need very little water to them, and all I'm using are 2 brushes. I've got a really fine brush and I've got a thicker brush to do my backgrounds. So just let me show you what little you need. So I'm just going to touch the paint And there's the colour. Beautifully rich and very, very creamy. And obviously the more water that you add, the lighter that colour becomes. Okay, so let's make a start on our little rabbit who's been masked up. So with the thicker brush, I'm just taking some clean water and I'm just putting a wash over the back of the rabbit. And it's really easy to do. All you need is just the courage to go ahead and do it. Now with some water on my brush, I'm going to go into the really pale blue. And all I'm doing, because this is wet, it just takes the colour off the brush. So I'm just going to spread that around, because this is going to be my sky. So we'll just come down to the horizon again. And we'll get a little bit more. And we'll just dot it around. And this really is just how easy it is. You don't need to worry about, well, I can't draw and I'm not very good with watercolours. You know, I mean, how easy can this be? Just go for it, ladies. Just have a go. So once we've got that first wash in, we'll clean the brush. Now that water's starting to get muddy, so to make sure that the brush is really clean, I'm going into the clean water one. And I'm coming to the next shade along, and I'm going to pick up some blue from there. Now if I don't want it quite so blue, I can just add in some water. But we're going to go in now with the darker one, and we're just going to dot this around as well. Now what you need to make sure of before you move to the next area is that that is dry. And if you don't want it quite that dark, then take some tissue and just blot it off a little bit. And that'll give you a nice cloudy sky in the background. Now what I'm going to do next, this is dry now, and I've just given it a quick blast with the heat gun just to dry it off. I'm coming down to this area and I want to use 2 shades of green. So to help myself with the lid, you have the little swatch in there. So what I've done is with every colour that's in the pans, I've put it into the box that it's numbered with. So now I can look at this and I can see that, you know, I've got different shades of pink and different shades of green, and that will really help me as I go along. So for this one, I'm coming into this shade of green. This is number 54, and I'm just going to start to add it in along the bottom here. So don't forget to wet this area first, because that will help your paint to move. So I'm just coming in up to the horizon, and I'm just going to pop this paint along the bottom. Now I'm using the finer brush because what I want to do is just water this down and just flick with the brush, and that will give me my grass strands. So we'll just carry on now filling this in. It's pre-wet, don't forget. And again, the water's doing the blending for you, and you don't want it nice and smooth, you want it to look like grass. So I'm coming in now to the shade that's underneath. This is number 58, and if you look on the swatch, it's a little bit darker. So we'll just come into there and we'll just put some really deep shadow under his feet. And we'll bring the shadow down onto the rest of the grass, because he would be casting a shadow down onto the grass. And then make sure that you clean your brush off, get rid of all the green that's on it, and we can leave that to dry. And again, we can just dab it down if we want to, and that will make it really patchy underneath his feet. So once you've got this done now and it's dry, and it's, as I keep saying, it's very easy to do, there's nothing to be afraid of. Just peel your mask off very carefully and add it back to the carrier sheet. So now I'm going to work on the little rabbit, and I want to do him brown. So this is my brown, and this is number 47, and that is this one in the paint tin. So wherever I need some brown, I'm just going to put some water in there, and then with my brush I'm going to pick up a little bit of the colour, only a bit, and I'm just going to pop the brown in just on the edges, just along there. Now it's just a little bit too wet, so we'll just take some water off and we'll bring the brown in along there. So then I'm going to clean my brush off and I'm going to dry it this time, and now I'm going to just spread that colour out across his little tummy, and then I'm going to move on to the next piece of his body. So I'm going to do his ears, and again I'm taking off some of the water that's on my brush, but I'm putting in some water to this area, and again we'll go back to the brown. Now just to make sure that that brown is not too thick, I'm bringing it onto my little palette, my little white tile, and I'm just going to put some brown in along the top edge of his ear. And I'm not being really neat because it's like fluffy on the end there, and I'm going to do the same along his head and down his other ear. I'll have a little bit more brown. So just go very careful with your colours, because you can always add colour in, but it's a little more difficult to take it back out again if you put too much in. So clean the brush, and we'll just bring that colour now. There's no colour on this brush now, it's just clean water. I'm just going to bring that colour down a little bit further into that ear, and that, just that simple thing, gives you some shadow and shading in those ears. So I'm now going to do the rest of the face, both his feet and both his arms, in exactly the same way, wetting the area first, bringing in some colour, and then blending it out, and the water is doing the work for me. So once your painting is dry and you can use a heat tool to speed up the process, we're going to move on and do another area. So I'm just pre-wetting the ears just to add a little bit of water, and I'm avoiding the dots that are the spots in the ears. And then I'm using the red. Now if you look in the lid, you have the colours, and I've used the colours from the box to add the swatches to the lid, and I'm using their number 35 just to do the ears. Now if it's a little bit too dark, you can always add more water just to lighten the colour up, and I'm just going to add that into the ears. So just by drying the brush off a little bit and going back, I can remove some of the water, which will just keep the colour in the ears very pale. And then just go back and add in a little bit of shadow just under the fold in the ears. So I'm just going to use a fine liner here just to add in the black on the nose. But you can use the black in the paints if you wish. And we'll just add a little bit of black into the eyes just to make them a little bit more pronounced. So I'm going to use the same shade of pink, number 35, and I'm just going to add some to the centre of the flower. And this has been pre-wetted, so I'm just now dragging the colour out from the flower into the petals. And then I'll take a little bit more just to go back in and darken the centre. And then I'll dry the brush off and drag that colour out just to the edge of the petals, and that really is all that's needed on that flower, just a subtle colouring to make it stand out a little bit more. Now if you look on the image, it's got 2 patches and a heart, so I just thought that the red heart would look nice on the jeans. So I'll add a little bit more colour and we'll make this a bit darker. So now I'm going to move on to a different area. And while I was doing the green grass, I forgot to do the stem on the flower, so I've just gone back in with a little bit of green just to finish that flower. So for the shirt, I thought I would use a really nice pool colour, and this is a beautiful shade of turquoise green. So I'm just going to add some water, pick up some colour, and I'm going to start on the shirt. So I'm going to put in the bits where the shade would be first. We'll go around the outside edges. So he's got some shadow under his chin and down the side of his body. So I'm just spreading the colour around, letting the water do the work, staying within the lines. So I'm going to pick up a little bit more of the colour and I'm coming back into the sides of the shirt again, and just by adding in some shadow along each side will give the shirt some shape. It will make it look more round. Now you need to make sure that the shirt area is dry before you start the jeans, and I'm going into the dark blue, and this is number 67 on the board, to do the jeans. If you don't wait till the shirt's dry, you'll find that the colour will run into your jeans, so make sure that each area is dry first, and as I said before, you can use your heat gun just to speed up the process. So I'm using this really dark blue to go down the side of the jeans, and that's going to be where the shadow is on each side of the rabbit's body. And we'll come along the cuff of the jeans, and I'm going to spread some of the colour out a little bit, and I'm coming into the sides. So I'm going to try and avoid the patches on the jeans, because I want those to be a different colour and to stand out. So we'll just take the colour a little bit further. So again, we'll put some colour in the creases and along the inside part of the leg. And then wash the brush off, clean the brush off, dry it a little bit, and then you can just spread that colour out into the water and make it work for you. Let the water do the work. keep it paler in the middle, and that will accentuate the shape. Now, once everything's dry, I'm taking a white gel pen, and all I'm going to do is put some stripes on that shirt. So they're very faint, but they are noticeable. So let me just turn this round, because I'm going to come down the body that way. So there's the little stripes in his shirt. And I've gone over the white dots in his ears, just to bring those spots back again. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to do is draw the fencing in. And this is just freehand, so have a little practice run if you need on some scrap paper, and all you're going to do is draw some down posts and make sure that they're all covered in black. So this is just a fine liner pen, and you're going to space them out. They don't have to be level, they don't have to be straight. It's just a really rickety old fence that's in the field. So once you've done that, you're going to put your planks across the top, so they can just go in like so. And that's your little fencing, and you can make that as long as you want, but do remember that as it goes into the distance, your fence posts will get smaller. So it depends on how far you want to take it into the distance. So I'm just going to put mine in along here. And we're not worrying about shadows on them or anything like that. We're just adding in the little fence posts, and we'll draw in the other parts. So we'll put another one just there. Now, to do the birds in the sky, all you're doing, and I'll show you on this piece first, are little V's with curved sides, and they will look like birds that are flying in the sky, and they only need to be small because they're way in the distance. And then what I've done to add my sentiment is I've just stamped and embossed a sentiment onto some white card, and I'm just going to turn it into a little banner. So I'm going to cut straight up the middle along there, and then from that side to the top of the V, I'm just going to cut it out, and then I shall put some foam pads behind that and add it to the card. But first of all, I want to take the masking tape off. Now, if your watercolour has gone underneath the masking tape, you can always trim that off, which is what I've done with this one. I've trimmed it down and I've backed it onto some blue. But to make the little birds that sit on that fence, on that banner, this is all you're going to do, and it's very, very easy. So all you're going to do is draw a heart shape and make sure it's coloured in. You don't want any white bits showing. It's got to be the black body of the bird. And then when you've done that, you're going to put a little bow type thing at the bottom, just a little fan thing at the bottom, and that's his tail. And then on the top you're going to put a circle, and then on that you're going to put a little beak, and whichever way you put your beak is the way the bird will be facing. And that's really all there is to it. So there's my card finished. I've trimmed off the edges and I've created a paler turquoise mat for him to sit on, and I'm going to add him to a teal card. But before I do that, in between this layer, the watercoloured layer, and the mat, I'm going to add in a piece of craft foam. Really cheap stuff, but makes all the difference to your cards. And it takes out any warping that's in that card. So that's all I'm doing, is just adding in some glue, adding in my craft foam, which is slightly smaller than the watercoloured piece. Then I'm going to add it to my base, my layer, and you will need a lot of glue because the craft foam can be a bit awkward to stick sometimes. And then we'll add this to the base, and that will sit along there. And there you've got your card ready to send.